Blog Talk Radio.
All Pro Media Group Radio showcases professionals on a daily basis. Be inspired and listen to experts from around the globe share their accomplishments with you. APMG Radio, success at its finest. You're listening to APMG Radio, and this is episode 1 of Technology Revealed, an audio blog with Dr. Halladay. Dr. Halladay, thank you for joining us today.
It's my pleasure.
Great to have you on this show. How much impact is technology having on our personal lives in today's society?
Well, I guess if you look at what could impact it, it's huge. If we look at what we're going to pay attention to, it may not be quite so insurmountable. But that's part of the issue. We're facing a lot of issues. We're looking at changes that almost are occurring on a daily basis, and it sometimes is very overwhelming, and we have to sometimes be selective, but certainly not afraid to embrace those changes that are in front of us.
What issues are we facing? What are some of the issues that you're seeing when it comes to technology? Because technology is such a wonderful thing, but it does seem to be changing and evolving at such a fast pace, like you said, that it can be very overwhelming for us all.
Yeah, we sort of, it's a real tough question to say, how far do I go? What do I want to do? I think that it's important to embrace the fact that changes are taking place. We have to realize that some are going to be important to us, some are not. We have to do sort of our own filtering, but at the same time, take those areas that you're comfortable with and work outwards from that to expand your knowledge and your interest.
What are some of the technologies that you see that you think are extremely beneficial and that you have seen have a lot of good influence over us?
Well, we'll go into that a little bit. We have our further discussions in terms of those things which are directly influenced to our lives today, credit, shopping, entertainment, our key areas that we're all influencing with, but obviously our cars, our vehicles in general, and how we support security in our home and elsewhere.
Let's now focus on something that you've had experience with, which is solar array installation. Tell us a little bit about this and what it is.
Well, obviously, from a green environment and also from an economic standpoint, it makes sense to try and take advantage of energy that's there all the time, which is not there, but during the day, for instance, or many hours in different locations. And it does help decrease the amount of greenhouse gases that are being emitted by the fact that we're burning coal, we're using other energy that impacts our environment, and solar energy is now getting to the point where it's economical enough to be considered for the home. And I think I'll go into that a little bit and exactly the details that you want to look at if you have that in mind.
And what made you decide to incorporate this into your own home?
Because, one, the economics are a lot more reasonable today. The technology's had some time to mature. The structure of the power companies is now recognizing this is influential, so they offer incentives. So there's incentives economically to go ahead. There's a practical aspect that it decreases your demand, the home's demand, and also saves money in the long term.
Tell us a little bit about the process. How did you go about finding the right vendor to install this?
Well, that's part of my engineering background is that it's always important for a major expenditure to look for contractors who are in the business and give them a chance to respond to your need and see what their expertise is, both engineering and economically, to understand all the factors involved that impact a house.
Because a lot of the time when something comes out on the market, it does take time. There are tweaks, there are things that will need to take place with a product before it actually reaches that perfect level. So what advice do you have for a customer?
Oh, well, I think this is, it used to be the only way we get information is with newspapers and magazines. But the Internet has changed the availability of information on, one, what are the manufacturers doing? Two, what are the personal responses? People are now blogging, just like talk radio. Mm-hmm. They're also communicating versus the other Twitter and Facebook and so forth. And so it's important to do a little bit of filtering. You can do searches on the web, which are very effective. And it's also important to look what's in the written magazine sometimes. They can have you more help. So if you're interested in a particular technology, do a little bit of searching before you jump into it. See what other people. There are always those people who will do the first of anything that comes out. and take risk. There is certainly risk. And there's also not just risk technically, but also financially. But so if you get some of the first experiences out there, it may give you to drive to more interest and more searching to find out what's really available and what's it going to cost before you really jump in, wholeheartedly.
We've been talking about technology within our daily lives, and I think this is something that has come up recently. At what stage do we go past the kind of line where it's great to have this technology, but now we're starting to invade on privacy because everything is so accessible? What would you say to that?
I'd say it's important to keep track of, one, what the issues are, especially with respect to privacy, and we'll talk a little bit about that. But I think it's also important to, if you have feelings with respect to privacy, is to make those known to your leaders, both locally and nationally, on what your feelings are. So it's important to see that our laws and the government has a good understanding, or at least should have a good understanding of those things that are driving us and not just someone else. It's always going to be a ticklish boundary between privacy and protection from people who would do us harm outside the country, but also from within it. So it's a delicate balance.
So we've been talking about technology within our daily lives. And Henry, we spoke earlier about the solar array system installation. Tell us a little bit more about this.
Okay, well, I've been watching what's been happening with solar panels, solar arrays for some time, initially driven by the fact I worked with a company that had satellites that used solar arrays in space where there wasn't any way to get hydroelectric or other power. So I've been watching the state of the art, and it was getting to the point where enough trials had been underway for commercial applications that I decided that it was time to get some additional detail to try and say whether or not it was worthwhile for me to try a major investment in my home. The first thing I did was to identify 3 potential vendors in this state to get recommendations, is it going to work for me, and to get the estimates of what it would cost and what the payback was. Actually, I got 3 responses and 1 which did not call back. 2 actually came out, but only 1 had the best thorough approach, plus offered digital home energy monitoring. I have always been interested in knowing how much I'm using in the home and where's it going, not specific to identify a particular appliance, but I'll mention that I do have a hot tub which is electrically powered, and I wanted to know, is it working correctly? The vendor I selected did an on-site survey, actually went up on the roof and mapped where the sun was going to be blocked, how much view I'd have, and whether this home location was adequate for enough solar energy to provide a reasonable return on investment. This is very useful. They actually could use Google Maps to find my home, to do a preliminary survey of the surroundings of the homes to make sure there was not blockage. But actually, when they went up on the roof, they had a device that allows them to determine how much sun I'm going to be seeing during the day, which is part of the equation to determine the economic return of putting solar arrays on the roof. They also measured the roof to see how many panels I could have. The items which became not totally apparent to me was that the in-state solar panel manufacturers get a tax advantage, and that's offered some incentives to persons such as myself in terms of what's it going to cost. There are also some tax breaks that are currently being offered by various states and by the federal government. The federal government gives a tax allowance on your income up to, currently it's 30% for the expense of having a solar array installed. It's also possible to have part of the array providing hot water. In my case, I decided, no, don't need to do that because I'm using gas, which is already essentially a third of the cost of electric heating. So I decided that isn't necessary. But I did want to have net metering. What that means is that the excess solar energy that's output during the year is provided back to the power company, and you get credit for that. Obviously, depending on where you live and how much sun you get, does determine how much you can provide back to the power company. But more places are going to see that as important as our rivers become unable to service the dams and get by with the wildlife or even have enough water to provide all the power we're going to need. So we're going to need more power in the future than we do right today. So part of the economic matrix that was provided by the company is what's it going to cost initially, what kind of return could you expect from these incentives and rebates, if you will, and how many years is it going to take to give back your money if you decide to go with something which is not optimal. So this is all a big important factor that's taken place over the years in what is it worth to the consumer to take advantage of solar power. Other key attributes, they've learned that they can have a solar panel which has a 25-year life to it to provide the rated output power, and that the electric interface between the solar panels, which output DC power, to interface with the electric grid, which is 240-volt power, AC, is on the order of a 10-year warranty period. So what you want to look at is how long is this stuff going to last before it starts to have failures to it versus am I going to be in a home for that length of time and get the money back? Obviously, if you sell the home, the people who are going to be buying it have the advantage of that system. So it doesn't just go away.
Brilliant. And how can people contact you and listen to this show if they were missed the live version?
Okay, they can go to my website, which is henryhalladay.com, or if they want, they can also look on Blog Talk Radio. I believe the episodes are there. And if they have any questions, they can email me at henryhalladay@earthlink.net.
Brilliant. Well, Henry, thank you so much. Always a pleasure having you on the show.
It was my pleasure. Thank you very much.
You've been listening to APMG Radio with my special guest, Dr. Henry Halladay. This show and many others can be found at allpromediagroup.com. Thank you all for joining us today. I'm Lucy, and you've been listening to APMG Radio. All Pro Media Group Radio showcases professionals on a daily basis. Be inspired and listen to experts from around the globe share their accomplishments with you. APMG Radio, success at its finest.